Thank you for being up here. And I think Minister Kantati gave us a very good starting point. He mentioned someone at the White House. And I think if we do not resolve this question before long, then there's no point of discussing the rest of the world. My first question is to any one of you who want to venture into this speculation. Will President Trump be re-elected? Donna?
I have no idea.
No, you're not supposed to say that. You're supposed, as an academic, to make predictions. It doesn't matter whether you're right or wrong.
Well, look, first of all, I have to admit that my colleague, Gi-wook Shin, if I may say this, I think it's true. Earlier today, in fact, we had an event where Gi-wook argued that Donald J. Trump will be reelected.
He said that?
Yes. Likely. Okay, no, likely. Sorry, okay, yeah, I'm corrected. Likely. And so the obvious question, I am an academic, right? And I believe in the dialectic, right? The thesis. So the antithesis to that is that he will not be reelected. And I think there are arguments in favor of both propositions.
So you are on the side of Trump not being reelected. And Gi-wook is on the side of Trump being elected.
Well, when you say on the side, that means it's a good idea. No, we're observing. We're not cheering for anybody.
No, I'm not asking you to cheer anyone. I'm asking for your very scientific, objective analysis.
Okay, well, all I would say is this. We could spend the whole evening talking about Donald J. Trump, and I hope we won't, actually. I would simply say this, that obviously the strongest suit that he can bring to bear is growth in the economy. And he can make moves that will move the markets up and down. And actually, the American economy is in good shape. How long that will last is another matter, but it could last until November of next year. And so I think there's a standard reference among political science that says, look, if the economy is doing well, that really matters for the incumbent, more likely to be reelected. And let's also remember that most of the presidents who have run for a second term in recent history have won that second term. So that's on Gi-wook's side of the argument.
What about your argument?
Your argument.
Well, I don't have an argument. I mean, I'm trying to desperately, because I think that Donald J. Trump, I'll be quite frank, this man is despicable. That's the word that describes him. And Donald J. Trump, I think, actually is well aware.
I must remind you, this is on the record.
Well, I already said it, so it's too late. I can't retract it, right?
Okay.
Right. But anyway, I'm hoping very much that the American people realize that this president is a disaster, that he may be remembered as one of the very worst presidents in the entire history of the United States. We could talk about his competition, Andrew Johnson and so forth, and that they will have the good sense not to reelect him.
Why would he be reelected?
Okay, I think it's one thing if you like him or not, as a person or as a leader. But we also have to understand,
Do you like him or not?
Should I answer the question? Yeah. Well, of course, I don't like him. Of course, living in California, it's very hard to support Trump.
Okay.
But still, I think that's not my point, because we have to understand why he became elected. We are all surprised 3 years ago he was elected, and you have to understand social base for the rise of Trump, and I think that is still very strong. I mean, what happened in UK, right? Why UK get re-elected? I mean, it's likely to re-elect Johnson, right, as prime minister.
As was approved today. He got a huge landslide victory.
Right, exactly. So, this kind of rise of, populism, nationalism is a very global phenomenon. It's not confined to United States. So, as the minister said, impeachment may go through the House, but not likely to go through the Senate. And still strong support for him. And whether you like him or not, that base hasn't really, faded in my view. And also, who's going to compete against him from democracy side? I don't see any strong candidate.
No, Joe Biden cannot beat him?
I doubt. So
Bernie Sanders?
God bless him, yeah.
Elizabeth Warren?
I don't think so. So that's why, it's not that I like him as a leader.
Michael Bloomberg? He has enough money.
Yeah. So, but still, as an academic to analyze, election and the rise of Trump, I think he's likely to be reelected. That's my prediction, and you can bet some money.
You can bet some money on it tonight. Karen, your frank personal opinion?
I am not a student of politics so much. I'm a student
How
of
healthy
health
is he?
systems.
How healthy is he?
And we know the U.S. health system was a mess before he got there, and it's not getting any better.
So, will he be elected or not? Or do you want him to be re-elected or not?
I think you already spoke about those of us in California, so.
Or you are from California too, so.
I'm born and raised in California and live there and teach there now, so yes.
I see. Andrew? Andrew is in a very special position. He worked for Donald Trump. He met Donald Trump many times. So I don't know whether it's objective enough, but let's hear him.
So as a professional intelligence officer for almost 30 years, as an intelligence officer, we don't give assessment based on gut feeling, right? So we have to have a good intel to based on, and there's no really good intels about the prediction of the re-election chance. So I really cannot give you what will happen. But if you just, as a professional, Shin mentioned, if you look at the history, even just as a recent, 3 years ago, everybody thought that it would be a Hillary Clinton. But it was surprise, a factor played in.
You were surprised too? 3 years ago?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And at the time, actually, I was here in Bangkok. I was working here, and everybody within the government, most people thought that it would be a Hillary Clinton. But a lot of people surprised, right? And I think there's a lot of middle class, folks in the Trump support base. At the time, it was kind of too divisive for them to come out and say, I'm going to support him. So a lot of them were very quiet until they went to the poll, and then they pulled that, sort of their support for him. I think if that history is repeat in going to different direction, I think he may not this time.
He may not.
Yeah. So
Because
that's just
it will be another surprise, meaning that one surprise 3 years ago, another surprise next year. So who will be your president?
I have no idea.
American people are in total confusion. You don't know your future. At least we Thai people know who our prime minister will be. In November, we had this summit meeting of ASEAN, plus our dialogue partners, and Thailand was the host. We were very disappointed that President Trump did not come. We expected at least Vice President Mike Pence. And at least, if not President Mike Pence, the Foreign Minister, the Secretary of State, Pompeo, your good friend, right? Your good boss. Pompeo was not here. So he sent the security advisor, O'Brien, and then on a separate mission in Bangkok as well, he sent Commerce Secretary of Commerce, Wilbur Ross, who had nothing to do with the summit. There was this sideline conference of business people. How do you explain the role of America in Southeast Asia if the United States is showing or is not showing enough interest in this, one of the most important summits in this region?
Well, that's why we are here to make it up.
Donald,
Yeah, Tom, maybe. Yeah.
you're in charge of Southeast Asia in America for us.
Hardly. Look, what happened at the U.S. ASEAN summit was a result of utter, total, complete incompetence on the part of the White House. There's no excuse for it whatsoever. And so I won't belabor the point. But I would like to make a related but different point. Namely, that it's important to understand that the United States today is operating on two different levels. They're not the same, they're different. One is the agency of Donald Trump, the personality of Donald Trump. Donald Trump probably right now is thinking to himself, if I am not reelected in November of next year, I could go to jail. And he cares about nothing more than he cares about himself, okay? And frankly, he doesn't like to travel very much to begin with.
No?
So you have the extraordinary, unique, and I'll repeat the term, despicable personality of Donald Trump. I mean, I could go into, you know, if we were talking about America, it would be, what are the lies ahead? Donald J. Trump's America in 2020 and beyond.
Right.
Really?
We will save that for another seminar, another
a
conference.
separate one, right?
Yeah,
a
separate
follow-up,
one.
right? But Donald Trump is not the U.S. government, and he's certainly not the United States. He's the head of the U.S. government, but that doesn't mean, fortunately, that he is, you know, dominating everything to the point where even minor decisions are because of him. No, the United States is a large, diverse country, you know, now deeply divided between the Republicans and the Democrats, admittedly. But it's not just the agency of Donald Trump that is involved in an American presence in Southeast Asia. It's the very structure of the U.S. government. I mean, I could go on and on about the programs and so forth. I mean, look, when ships are sailing, U.S. Navy ships are sailing regularly through the South China Sea and risking probably some possible kinetic response from the People's Republic of China. That indicates that at least with regard to the South China Sea and maintaining its autonomy from China, the United States is not only very interested, it is in fact present. Now you can disagree with that behavior, but it's certainly a sign of presence. Take the economy, just one other point, because I don't want to turn this into a lecture. We all talk about the trade with China. China's winning on the trade fair, absolutely. What about investment? American investment in Southeast Asia dwarfs what China is able to do. In fact, if you take China, Japan, and so forth, and add them all up, no, the total stock of American investment in this part of the world is massive, right? And look at the difference between trade. If I trade with you and I send my widgets to you, and then for some reason I don't do that anymore, well, I just stop doing it, easy. But if I build a factory, if I commit myself, I put in capital, then I'm part of your system. I'm on your turf, and I can't just pick up and leave. I've got maybe 100, 200 employees to worry about. So if investment is a sign of long-term commitment, the Americans are more committed to this part of the world than are the Chinese. And I could go on and give you other illustrations, but I won't.
Karen, does Don need anger management training?
Anger management.
Actually, let me take
Yes. Okay, Andrew.
So, in Washington, when you work, you know, operate in Washington, there's a very common theme, and if you're not at the table, you're on menu, and that's the kind of a mentality.
You're
so you
not
gotta be
at the table. You are the menu, right?
So yeah, if you're not at the table, we call that you are on menu, right? So that's the kind of mentality how it works in Washington. So having, you know, the lack of a presence in ASEAN leadership, meeting, that's not normal Washington, characteristic.
No.
So it was unfortunate, right, this time. But I think just to want to remind people, at the time, I was staying in Washington every day. I was, dealing with, meeting with my former colleagues and my friends and working there. I think President, Vice President, and Secretary of State Pompeo, most important thing at the time they're dealing with was the impeachment hearing, right? So it was really hard for them to go beyond that and really playing sort of chess game with the word, kind of in their hands. So I think there was, I'm not giving the excuse here, right? But I think there's context that we have to understand at the time in Washington.
So it's the obsession.
Yeah.
Can I add? So it's not only ASEAN countries. that were disappointed. If you look at the alliance system in Northeast Asia, I mean, there has been a linchpin for U.S. security system.
Yeah.
With Japan, with South Korea. But his view about the alliance, I mean, he doesn't really appreciate the value. And most experts in Washington or at our university, we really value the alliance system. But I don't think Trump, really has good appreciation of the system. So, for example, now U.S. is negotiating with South Korea about defense sharing, and I mean they're asking 5 times more than the current price.
That's
now
true.
They're asking South Korea to pay $5 billion.
Yeah.
The current price is $1 billion. So there's a lot of confusion, a lot of concern. Some people are quite nervous about the credibility of U.S. leadership.
But
in
if you
Asia.
know Trump, then this is only part of the bargaining process. If you ask for 5 times the price now, he expects you to come back with
But I think
with a new price that may be a bit lower. Then he will say, okay, I will consider it. No, this is not his style.
I think there may be one possibility, but I have a little different view.
Yeah.
I think he's trying to politicize this issue because during campaign saying, look, Japan and South Korea, they're very wealthy. Why do you have to send our people? Why do you have to pay to defend their country? So I think he knows that South Korea is not going to pay $5 billion. But I think he's going to keep saying this during campaign next year. So it will become political issue more than bargaining chip. That's
So
my
everything is domestic for Trump.
Absolutely. So winning election, nothing else.
Karen, what should we do? What should we poor Thai people do with this? Please give us some nice, friendly advice.
Well, they say it's difficult to make predictions, especially about the future. But there are
Yes.
some things that I think are longer term, maybe affecting the day-to-day lives that we can keep in mind.
Right.
So, for example, going to the point about longer-term social trends, there are demographics that are shaping the whole future of this region, and that will continue to change. And the trends in inequality in the U.S. and other parts of the world that underlie some of the growth in nationalism, populism. Indeed, one of the recent economic Nobel laureates, Angus Deaton, one of his most recent publications was on death rate trends in U.S. and Europe. I don't know if anyone has seen that article or knows what the results of that were. But basically, you see the death rates coming down for white Europeans and so on, and for middle-class U.S. data. Opioid epidemic, deaths of despair, all of that, it's, we can argue about whether it's related or not, to what extent, but there's an underlying trend there that has to do with inequalities and social opportunities. It's all shaped by the changing demographics and opportunities for longer lives and healthy lives, and other opportunities that we're all struggling with. So that's just one of the contexts that people are thinking about, not to mention that the rise of the automation and risk to occupations, and AI and robots are going to come take all our jobs. There are all these other dynamics that people are worried about as well.
But the United States used to be the leader in all these issues. Now perhaps no more. Now we see these issues being taken up by China, by Europe, rather than the United States. So you're really falling behind. And from the viewpoint of a third world country like Thailand, we are totally confused as to how we can remind leadership of the USA that, hey, don't get away from this region, because you are leaving a big gap, and the gap is being filled by a major power that will be your enemy.
Well, I'll let my colleagues talk about it, but China is not immune to many of these challenges as well. And we know the rate of economic growth is coming down, the population is aging, there are multiple challenges that it's dealing with as well. So we also don't know the future there, but we have to think longer term about what's going on. And Washington's not the only part of the U.S. There's Silicon Valley, and there's still many vibrant entrepreneurs and innovation in that region. I would invite my colleagues
So
to talk about
so you still have hope of your country?
I think I'm pathologically optimistic.
No, seriously, we want to advise from the Southeast Asia standpoint, how do we approach the United States? If he gets re-elected, then there'll be 4 more years of foreign policy under Trump that could be worse than now, because the first 4 years he would have to behave in such a way that he will get re-elected. In a way he would, behave himself. But if he gets a second term, he has nothing to worry about. Is that going to get worse?
We're not talking very much about Southeast Asia. We're talking a lot about the United States. And look, let me say something that's a little bit impolite. You use the phrase third world. That's associated with the Cold War.
Yeah.
And I think there's a standard image here of, the grass being trampled by the elephants. You know that metaphor. Mm-hmm. When the elephants fight, the grass is trampled. When the elephants make love, the grass is trampled. Right? And Southeast Asia is the grass. And so you need our elephant. You can have our elephant to play off against the other elephant.
Yeah, sure.
And maintain your middle position.
Yeah.
Right? Now, frankly, this is absurd. This is absolutely absurd. Mm-hmm. First of all, the very notion of the grass, you're inanimate. You're abandoning any kind of autonomy, any proactivity. You're just waiting to be trampled, right? Mm-hmm. You're completely fatalistic. Mm-hmm. That's not the role for Southeast Asia. And, let me be also a little bit provocative and suggest that, you are exaggerating the importance of what happened at the end of the U.S.-ASEAN summit, right? I mean, this is perhaps a little bit, again, perhaps unkind to say in a Southeast Asian context. But if Trump had come and if he had attended that meeting, mm-hmm. what dramatic achievement would have resulted from the meeting? Was it as if the ASEAN summit meeting was getting ready to decide on some important matter which would demonstrate the willingness and ability of ASEAN as a unified agent to actually make a difference on the world stage? No. Are you saying that Trump makes no difference? Right, but are you saying the leader of the most powerful country in the world? You're upset for a diplomatic reason. It is said that showing up is half of diplomacy. Yeah. My answer to that is, what about the other half? Let's say you do show up. Has ASEAN solved or even begun to try to solve the problem of, let's say, PM 2.5, right, of the air pollution that Kantati talked about earlier? Yeah. What has ASEAN done with regard to the South China Sea? Have they contributed to some sort of a solution there? How about the Mekong Delta, right? Yeah. With all that's happening with the dams and the blocking of fish and so forth? How about global warming, right, which is going to eat up 1/3 of Vietnam, namely the entire delta in the south could be underwater, not to mention the situation here in Bangkok. Right. What is ASEAN's record of performance on problems that face Southeast Asia? It's not very good, except for the economy on trade, and I admit, that's terrific. ASEAN has done wonderfully with regard to the trade and is responsible for economic integration to some extent in Southeast Asia, and I could go on and on. That's wonderful. But on the side of the visceral existential questions that I've just mentioned, ASEAN is the one that's absent, not the United States. We need someone to defend ASEAN here. Minister Kantati, please be ready. You will be asked upon to defend Southeast Asia because Don is saying Southeast Asia is not doing enough. Yes. Right? That's right. That's exactly what I'm saying.
Can I say about...
No, do you agree with them or not?
I never agree with Don Emerson.
I think he's deliberately provoking us, which is good.
Well, I have no expertise in ASEAN, but let me say about U.S. and China.
Yes.
Is it working?
Yeah, okay, go ahead. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. Because certainly I understand that there's a lot of concern about retreats of the United States in Asia and China becoming more aggressive. Mm-hmm. I mean, I fully understand because that's what I hear from Asian people. Mm-hmm. But still, I believe that there's no way that China can take over the United States in my generation. Okay.
How long?
Because
how long from now is your generation? 10 years? 20 years?
I hope I can live more than that. because besides its own domestic problems of China, right? I mean, a lot of problems. I mean, we are talking about problems in the United States, but China has much more problems.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And also, still they are, following United States in technology and other area. I mean, they are maybe fast follower, but they are really first mover or really innovating new technology. I mean, if you look at like Silicon Valley versus China, very different. And let me give you one.
Have you been to Shenzhen recently? China?
Okay, so let me give you one kind of example or story, because I hope that I don't offend the Chinese, but
there are many Chinese here too.
So in Palo Alto, housing price is crazy.
Yeah.
Very, very expensive.
Yes.
And we are saying that there are 3 times when housing price really spiked. The one when Google went to IPO. Okay, very young millionaire were buying house. The second one when Facebook went to IPO. You know what happened third time? Chinese. Chinese came to buy house in Palo Alto. Many wealthy Chinese, they are sending their kids to school in the United States. They are buying house, their whole family. So they are really, upper class of China. Why they are moving their family into Palo Alto? My interpretation, they don't have any faith in their own country.
No, my
the
interpretation.
future of their country.
No, my interpretation is they want to take over the United States.
So, actually, I know many Chinese friends who are in Palo Alto area.
Yeah, yes.
I mean, that's why even they don't have any good faith in the future of China. So I'm convinced that there's no way that China can take over the United States in my generation.
What about the next generation?
I don't live next generation.